some things that I think about when I'm looking at this fat loss percentage or this fat loss range, this body fat range. I'm like, okay, we need to look at how you look, feel, and perform. One of the things is we actually have to get to that level of body fatness to actually assess that, right? And we have to be assessing that along the way, while also layering on top the fact that to get to that level of body fatness, you actually have to be in a deficit. But what you feel in the deficit isn't necessarily what you're going to feel longer term. Like you might be in a 500 calorie deficit and be feeling like crap at this level of body fat. But as soon as you go back to a maintenance period, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I actually feel great at this level of body fat. It was actually just the deficit that was making me feel like crap, which is really hard, again, if you're coaching yourself. And it's even harder if you never have strategic maintenance periods, semi built into the plan. If you have no idea how to maintain, that's one of the key benefits of a maintenance period. It teaches you how to maintain. Again, earlier on we discussed it's basically like a third of the pie. If you never know how to maintain, you're not going to be able to maintain. So that's a key part of having it. But also a key part of having those maintenance periods is that it actually allows you to feel what it's going to be like longer term at that body fat level, right? Like you might diet down, you might get down to 10% body fat and be like, man, I feel like crap, feel like death, no energy, etc. Performance is going down, my fucking libido or whatever is, it's just not where I want it to be. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, we have a 2-week maintenance period here, a 4-week maintenance period, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you're 3-4 days into that and you're like, wow, actually I feel phenomenal. I feel great. Energy level is through the roof. Performance levels are through the roof. Libido is just fucking through the roof. And it's like, okay, so it's not necessarily the body fat that's hitting you. It's the lack of energy availability. It's the calorie deficit that was getting to you. So we maybe have a little bit more leeway or room to push body fat levels down another little bit before we start, encountering actual issues, right? So again, that's hard to do if you're coaching yourself, and it's hard to do if you don't ever build in maintenance periods into your plan overall. So that is definitely something that I would encourage overall. Do you have anything to say on that, Gary, in terms of body fat levels? Like, I definitely do agree with you. It's very hard to give an absolute range. Like, again, you could very easily say, okay, well, 8 to 16% body fat for a male. You'd be like, that's a good range to be in terms of general health metrics. Like, I do believe that's what the research would show. Like, people generally see better health somewhere in that range. If we're talking purely aesthetics, it's probably going to be closer to that 8% for most people. They're going to be like, oh, I want to be a little bit leaner. But again, that might compromise performance, that might compromise health. So we have to go back to our goals. And then for women as well, like, I would agree with you. That's probably somewhere in the high teens. Let's just say 17. You're picking that. It could be 16, could be 15, but let's say 17. 17% body fat, all the way up to like 30% body fat. And obviously, there are cases as well where you could be even, have more body fat than that and still be in a healthful range. Like, women do tend to be able to have more body fat and still be healthy, and for at least for longer than men. Like, say it takes a man gets to whatever, we'll say 20% body fat, it takes a year for that to have deleterious health outcomes in terms of blood lipids, plaque accumulation, or whatever else. Like, a woman might get 5 years out of that. It's just a benefit of being a woman. And this is why men, well, one of the many reasons why men die younger than women. So this is something to be aware of, that women do have a little bit more leeway with a lot of this stuff on the upper side. However, men have a little bit more leeway on the bottom side of this. Like, they're not going to run into as many issues with getting as lean. Now, this is somewhat offset with the fact that women don't have to get as lean as men, like getting to 8% versus being at 17%. Obviously, there's a huge difference there. But in terms of how they'll look, feel, perform at 18 or at 8% for a guy, generally they're going to feel better than a woman is going to feel at 17, 15, 16, whatever percentage it is. And also they're probably going to see less negative health impacts from being that lean, whereas for women, they probably will run into more health issues to get to that level of leanness. So that is something to be aware of, to layer onto your thinking in terms of like where do I ultimately want to fall, and how does that actually represent my overall goals? Like, yeah, it might be aesthetically pleasing to you, but is it actually respecting your health and your performance goals? It might not be. And again, we have to look at it from both sides of the coin. And this is one of those things which it's very easy to say all of that and then turn around and be like, oh yeah, so I'm respecting my performance and health metrics by virtue of, staying at 20% body fat, when in reality it's like your performance is actually crap. Like your performance would actually be better if you were a little bit leaner, and like you're just not fit. It's like, okay, you're looking at one performance metric, it's like just pure strength, and then also your health probably better when you're not like 30% body fat as a male. So it's like you can say things and be like, oh, I'm staying at this body fat level because of health or because of performance or because of whatever. But for a lot of people, when you actually do take that step back and you're not, in the moment of the thinking, you actually realize that it's just a bit of a lie so that you don't have to diet. Which, again, I do a lot of calls, and you'll also see that a lot where people are like, oh yeah, I want to start gaining. And you're like, you are in a position that you would just start compromising your health and actually compromising your performance if we were to start gaining from this position, which is obviously the flip side of this coin that we've been talking about, right? But what are your thoughts there, Gary?
Nothing. I think that covers it all. We've beaten that horse.